Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder, and I think I'm on the air now, hopefully on Studio A on Revolution Radio. We're going to be talking about the Billy Meier case today, which is my typical subject matter lately. And my producer tells me I'm live, so I'm happy to hear that. I'm going to bring on my guest. I think she's ready to go. Her name is Karrol Steeves, and I'll pull her in Skype here, see if she answers her Skype. Karrol, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. For the listeners, Karrol kind of runs the Meier study in Colorado. Are you guys near Boulder?
We are where our members, some live in Denver, some live in Boulder. I live in Loveland, so more north central Denver, northern Colorado areas so far. And I mainly am the organizer, I guess you would say. You know, everything we do, we all decide, make the decisions together, but I'm the one that kind of puts things together, make sure they happen.
Now, do they, for the listeners, just to kind of reorient everybody, all over the world and all over the country, there are study groups that are popping up all over that are studying the Meier spiritual teaching. What is the Billy Meier spiritual teaching? Billy Meier is an 81-year-old man from Switzerland, and he's written 51 books, or 50-some books. And these books deal with what you might call the creational natural laws in our universe. As a body, it's called the spiritual teaching in the Meier case. And one of these study groups, Karrol kind of heads up. Karrol, do you have that in your home?
Sometimes we do. We take turns. Sometimes we have it at my husband Bill's office because it's right near Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have it at one of the other members' house at Rem's house.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of depends on, you know, who wants to host it and where we have space. Sometimes we have it at a public library in a meeting room if the group is. Well, we were doing that for a while. But you can only reserve those rooms 2 weeks in advance, and if you don't get in there fast enough, you can be out of luck. So we generally went back to holding them either in an office or in someone's home.
Earlier in the week, I had the most interesting conversation with, I don't know if you probably don't know, her name is Solaris Blue Raven. She has a radio program. It's called the radio station's KCOR. It's out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been on her show on and off. She's real interested in the Meier material, and we got on a kind of a discussion, part of which I want to get back to. There is a contact report, and it drives me crazy. I was trying to find it just before the show started, that talks about when early humans appeared on the earth. And I didn't want to get into that too much because I know we didn't really plan on talking about that. But it was just so interesting because it talks about like right around 3 to 4 million, 4.3 million years ago, there were these hominids that were walking upright, some of them still living in trees. And somewhere around that time, and I've always thought in the book The Psyche that it talked about something like 4.5 or 4 million years ago, or it might even been 3.7, that the first human spirit forms started to appear in human beings. And that's, you know, one thing I want to just throw out as a question to you. I kind of find that over the years, I learn more and more, and it's really hard to describe if you haven't been through this. I know you have, Karrol. is that you're peeling back layers of this onion as you're learning more and more and more over time. At least that's what I'm kind of finding. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah, I do. I don't know about the. So, are you saying that you read that human spirit forms appeared here?
Well, let me clarify that, because we have, and this is a very interesting conversation, because we have naturally evolving earth humans on the earth that evolved from primates. And the very, very beginning of that evolution, in one area of my contact, I keep very huge notes on the web about this stuff. Occurred about 9 to 12 million years ago, but they weren't really humans yet. And I'm from this later contact report, maybe 3.7 million years ago, we started to get human spirit forms appearing in these pre-humans. Now, and you're probably very well aware of, and we maybe can talk about this a little tonight. I know we're kind of going off on a tangent about extraterrestrial civilizations on the Earth, like Atlantis and Lemuria and Pelagon, going back 150,000 years ago, or 133,000 years ago. But what I was kind of coming back to say is, when you get to the Meier material, like I first started studying all of this stuff, exopolitics in general, and I would interview all these contactees. Some of I thought were credible, some I didn't think were real credible. A lady I did think was credible was named Miriam Delgado, a lady in Canada, but she only had a couple meetings or contacts, and that was it. It was kind of incidental information. Then there was a guy named, of course, Travis Walton, who's really famous, but that's just one contact. There's another fellow named Charles Hall from the military that wrote 3 books called Millennial Hospitality 1, 2, and 3, I believe, about his experiences on the Nellis Air Force Base back in the late 60s. He claims there was a group of tall, very white-skinned extraterrestrials that had a base out there at this time, and he would talk about the colonels and the generals actually coming out there to meet with them, and a lot of times the tall whites wouldn't even allow them to look at the technology of their spacecraft on the engines. They would have them turn away. It's a very interesting story, but they never willfully gave Charles any information. So what I'm saying with a lot of words is that in the Meier case, we have 51 books, all of which aren't translated yet. We have 2,000 contact reports. We have this gigantic body of information that most people don't know about. So I would like for you to just comment on that in general, if you could. I know that's a lot of information.
Comment on which part?
Well, for example, the Meier information, we have a body of information just in these 3 books: The Might of Thoughts, The Way to Live, and The Psyche. Let's leave The Goblet of Truth out of it for a minute. There's more information in these 3 books than you'll ever be able to totally ingest in one lifetime. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And, when I'm on the internet, I'm reading the comments on different, someone will do some kind of podcast or a blog or something, and I see all the misinformation, that how confused and lost people are. Mm-hmm. I just think how long it's going to take to sort this all out. And, it's small wonder that it's going to take several hundred years at least.
Well, they talk about 8 centuries, right? 800 years.
Yeah, at least 800 years. Mm-hmm. Or we, Earthlings recognize the spiritual teaching as the truth. Mm-hmm. Until then, I think it's going to be a pretty rough ride. And when I see these comments, from people, and a lot of it's just all over the place, God's going to come save all of us, or God's going to come destroy everything, or let's kill the person who say it's something to do with a crime. That person should be tortured, and they don't even realize they're behaving just like the person who committed the heinous act. The teaching is so sorely needed to help get humans on track, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting you brought the whole concept of God. And I think that's one of the things, like I talk about the creation all the time on this show, but yes. One of the things I had to come to grips with early on is the information that talks about what we would say in the Meier case, the creation, that there's a spiritual energy that radiates love, but it's impersonal. It isn't a heavenly Father. It's not a personality. It's not going to save you. It's not going to stop you from jumping off a cliff. It's not going to save you if you wander out into traffic. But a father would do that. I mean, a father would, stop his child from wandering into the street. But this is a very different kind of thing than we realize.
Well, really.
Go ahead.
Really, religion is when you say that, a father would do that. That's because that's what you do with children.
Right.
Adults, religion stop people from growing up. They stay children. It infantilizes people.
Well said.
And so, there's no self-responsibility there. Someone's always going to come in and clean up your mess. You don't have to do it. God's going to do it, or Heavenly Father, or whatever you want to. Mm-hmm. Your creation doesn't interfere. It provides us with everything we need to make our own decisions. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to accept.
The other thing that's very interesting about the teaching that centers around creation is, you probably have had the chance to listen to some of Michael Udebrook from Figu, Canada. He has a great movie out on the creation, and he talks about. Let me just run down a little bit, and then this will give us some more stuff to talk about. According to Meier information, our universe is 46 trillion years old, and it was created, so to speak, in something called the Zohar, roughly that we would call the Big Bang. But it's much older than our scientists think. Our scientists think it's only about 40-some billion years old, but that's only the age of the matter. There are actually 7 layers to our universe. It's roughly elliptical shape, and these 7 belts, they counter-rotate against one another. And in the 4th belt is where the material exists. Everything else is what is called fine matter, which you could roughly think of as energy. So in the 4th belt of our universe are all the stars, the galaxies, the solar systems. And within that belt is further subdivided into 7 more layers, which are 7 different space-time configurations. Now, Billy's contacts don't come from our space-time configuration. And they were called the Pleiadians for years, but they're not from our Pleiades. So if you go out to our Pleiades, which would be something like 480 light years away, and then you go another 80 light years into one of these other space-time configurations. There's a solar system called the Pleiadian star system that has a planet there called Era, with some very, very highly advanced people that look a lot like us. But they're thousands of years ahead of us. And they had the ability to track spirit forms. And they knew this very, very ancient spirit form had been incarnating on the earth. And that it had been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And this is a spirit form that they were somewhat familiar with, called Nocodamian. Karrol, I wondered if you guys had studied the Nocodamian lineage at all.
We haven't. We started out giving, trying to give presentations, each of us, and then we realized after about a year or so that we really would be easier for us if we just studied a book.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've just focused since then on The Way to Live.
Okay.
And we've been studying that book now for, I want to say, two years, I think.
That's
Yeah.
what's so
Just one.
interesting about this information is that there are so many rabbit holes you can go down. There's so many interesting things to study and look at and talk about. But I think what you're pointing out there is a natural evolution that people either, after they read the contact reports and learn about ancient history and about other humans in the universe and learn more about the creation, then they start to learn about reincarnation. And then they start to get into these books like The Way to Live and The Might of Thoughts and The Psyche and the Goblet of Truth. And it almost, at that point, becomes like a self-help thing. Would you agree? I hate to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I think that's true, but it's an effective self-help.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're right about the rabbit holes. When we get together and we discuss the book, we'll read a little bit from it, and it brings up all these, we apply it to everyday life. We look at our own lives and take things from, the teaching and look at it and say, yes, I see how this applies to this situation in my life, or how it applies to what's going on in the world. We talk about politics, though we're not political.
Mm-hmm.
We'll discuss them in the context of what's happening in the world, as far as politics and how people are becoming so polarized in this country. So, it's definitely not Sunday school, which is a good thing. Everyone has their input, their thoughts about the material.
It's very interesting. You brought up the topic of us being polarized in the United States, and that makes me think of the social justice warriors. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of days when I've had free time, is going out on the internet and trying to understand this whole social justice warrior mentality. Have you looked into that at all?
No, I haven't. That sounds like a Marvel comic situation. So enlighten me. I don't know about this.
Well, for example, one of the topics, the big hot topics today, is transgender. People that
Yes, yeah.
have decided they like, for males that decide they want to be females, so they go through all these operations and they take hormones, and they want to be referred to by special pronouns now, because he and she isn't really adequate anymore. They have all these other pronouns. Don't ask me what they are. I can never remember. But Canada has passed laws where if you call a transgender person by he or she, you can get, and it's a crime. So,
Wow.
yes, this is how bad things are.
I mean, wow. It's
absurd.
I knew this was going on as far as, the transgender stuff and them trying, the having and being referred to by a different pronoun, but, that could make what's any different than, when you have a child, and this has happened to all of us who've had children. You're carrying the child around, and they're of an age where sometimes you can't really tell which sex they are.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says, "Oh, your little girl's adorable," and you're like, "It's a boy. It's not a girl." Then that would be a crime, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know in that specific case, but if there was a transgender person and you called this person he, you could, get arrested or something. Or if you called them she, you could get arrested.
Well, what I'm saying is, the point I'm making is, what is the difference? So, for example, I mean, you've got a transgender. Are you saying that, okay, this is what I want to understand. So are you saying that this person, say this person was previously male, and they had an operation change to female. And so they dress like a female and they sound like a female and they, everything.
They're taking hormones and their skin changes and their hair changes, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've seen pictures of many transgenders, and it's hard to
tell.
Yes, that they were even of the opposite sex.
Yes.
So if you call that previous male she, even though because they look like a female, is that what you mean they're calling a crime?
Yes. If you call them he or she, they have special pronouns now. And I don't like Z and I don't know, all these weird pronouns.
But what I'm saying, logically, that's illogical, is what I'm saying, because
yes,
and then calling any person, I mean, because most people are doing that mistakenly. That's the point I'm making.
Oh,
so you're not doing it on purpose. Say I'm going to call you she just to break the rules. You know what I mean? They say, "Oh, would you open the door for her?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how is that any different? Thinking this is just a woman who's been born a woman, than thinking a child someone is carrying that you can't really tell yet is a male or a female. There's no difference there. That's just, in the way I see it. And so that's illogical to make that a crime.
The reason I bring this up in light of the Meier material is that we are on a fast road to degeneration. I think Billy said in 2020 that the government of the United States would start to basically come apart. Another thing related to population, a lot of people don't know. One of the guests I have on, Frosty Wooldridge, says 100,000 immigrants are coming in the United States every month. Now, that's going to completely destroy our economy because we don't have that many new jobs every month for all these people.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe that's what the intent is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Because they're doing it in Europe too.
Yes.
It's very, deliberate from my point of view.
I agree. So anyway, all the predictions that Billy has had, which seemed so outlandish. I mean, I can remember Contact Report 215 where he would talk, and this goes back 8 or 10 years ago, and he would talk about hurricanes and fires. And I would think, I don't see many hurricanes and fires. When is this going to happen? Now the hurricanes and fires are.
I know.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. I know. It kind of rocked my world, because it's been 10 years in September that it's one of those things in my life. It was pivotal, so I'll always remember the month and the year. I don't remember the exact day, but I remember the month and the year. Uh-huh. And I remember reading about the civil wars and thinking, how is that going to come about? And now, it's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious.
With the polarization,
yes,
and what I would call the social justice warriors, the extreme left and the extreme right. It's very strange. Now, one thing you had brought up the way to live, so I want to talk about that. But one thing that's said, and you have a copy of the Might of Thoughts, don't you?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember in the introduction where Guido Musburger's wife said that the people on the earth are insane in their consciousness, ill in their consciousness is basically what she said.
Yes.
And it was like when I first read that, it just echoed through me. So she says here, so the book which lies before you is dedicated to a humankind which is ill in its consciousness, so that it again finds the creational natural way, which it lost so long time ago. Now, when I first read that, it's like I knew that was the truth. It was profoundly true. It shook me up. It rocked my world. I had some cognitive dissonance. But now, like you said, 10 years later, or however long it's been, I can see it. It's so extreme. It's all over the internet, the insanity.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. A lack of logical thinking, people being activated, and they can't seem to think things through
Yeah.
and stay. They are easily stirred up and manipulated. And that's part of what, with the teaching that we're all working, learning students, because we're all students, no matter what we're doing, we're all students, and we're learning neutrality so we can see things as they are and not be activated by all this, provocative language and actions. So
you brought up a very important point there, which is very profound. We talked about the creational natural laws. I think I mentioned those at the beginning of the show quickly. I hope I did. One of these creational natural laws is the law of harmony. And you said being neutral. So can you elaborate on that a little bit more? What it means to think in a neutral way?
Sure. So I think a good example might be you see someone doing something or saying something that is destructive. We'll just use that as an example. And instead of having this urge to control them or lash out at them, judge them as far as bad or good, as a person, you just observe and say, oh, this person over here is doing something destructive. Just very neutrally. You see what it is, you see what it's causing, you understand that it's their responsibility, and you don't allow yourself to get sucked into it or become punitive because of it. Because cause and effect of course, neutral positive means if they're doing something destructive to you, or they're doing something, physically, where they're hurting someone, or of course you're going to stop that. That's a neutral positive action. You're going to, this isn't a pacifist type of thinking. Well, stop them as peacefully as you can. You need to use force. What they call it, forceless, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, you don't use violence unless you absolutely have to. Restrain them if possible. So but of course, if your life is in danger, you defend yourself. So that's neutral positive action. But it's not done out of a desire to hurt them, destroy them. It is a neutral thinking. This person is being destructive, and my life is in danger. I need to stop them.
Here it is on page 52 of The Might of Thoughts. It says here, as a rule, suffering is always an effect of some form of wrong thinking. If the suffering relates to negative, bad, or evil outcomes, in this form, incidents of suffering are indicators that the law of harmony is disregarded and broken, and that one is therefore not living according to the law of being, which is directed at progress, love, peace, knowledge, wisdom, joy, and true inner freedom. This law determines that the thoughts must be progressive and neutral, positive, equalized. And that's basically what you're saying by thinking neutral, that you're neutral positive, you're just a little bit towards the positive, but you're in balance.
Right.
So when you get into self-created suffering, it always comes when we either become negative or too positive.
Yes. Well, I think, I have to bring up Trump because I'm not a political person. I'm not for him. I'm not against him. My attitude is, I hope the guy does a good job. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right,
It's
right.
not like, okay, so I want to make that clear that I'm just coming from a actually pretty neutral position.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I don't vilify him. I don't join in with these people who make fun of his family, make fun of him, make fun of his hair, make
Mm-hmm.
fun of. I just don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to look at him as a person and observe what he's doing wrong and what he's doing right.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff he's doing right, say good on that. He's doing this right. Q, he got that one right.
Mm-hmm.
This one, maybe he's not doing so well on this decision.
Mm-hmm.
And because I don't think that helps to gang up on anyone like that, that's been put in office. And
go ahead.
I just think it's destructive and it's polarizing. That's part of the polarization that's happening. People are doing this and they don't even realize they're being sucked in to behaving like this. They're being encouraged to do it and they're being sucked in.
Well, I think these people are almost hypnotized. They're almost
very possibly, yeah.
Like in a trance. Would you agree? Almost.
I would say, I think it probably depends on the person,
mm-hmm.
but I'm sure there's some of that going on, absolutely. And then there are people who are just so unhappy that they'll latch on to anything they can just put their hate towards,
Right.
And so I think it's a combination of factors that cause. I mean, I've seen it done. I see it done instead of just being adults about it and looking at the people that are running our country and saying, "Oh dear, we don't like this. Let's all get together and change this." Instead, we make fun of them, and what good does that do, really?
Well, I wanted to get back to your statement about being neutral positive. So, what the Meier material teaches, and the Might of Thoughts particularly, is that we should always think in a neutral positive way. So, once you know that, that's part of your conscious mind. Now, you have to get that down into your subconscious mind as well. Yes. So, we have these programs, for lack of a better word. I like Dr. Bruce Lipton, the way he talks about it. By the way, Marion in Switzerland kind of turned me on to Dr. Bruce Lipton. Did I tell you about that?
No, but I am very familiar with who he is, yes.
Oh, are you? Well, he has some really interesting things. He says between 1 and 7 years old, we are kind of in a theta state. And all we're doing is downloading things. We're just learning everything. We watch our father and our mother, and we basically memorize their behaviors, good, bad, and different. Same way with our older brothers and cousins and uncles and aunts and teachers and things like that. So for the first 7 years of our life, we're just absorbing all of these, like a music download almost. We just have all these behaviors that then are stored away. So when something happens in our life, we bring up these programs and they just play. We just react.
Right.
We're just reacting. We're not thinking. We're playing these programs. So and this kind of also kind of coincides with what the Meier material says, that a lot of our behaviors are subconscious. That we do a lot of things, even our subconscious thoughts can affect us. So Billy explains that we should think neutral positive, and those will bring good feelings and good habits and good circumstances in your life. But you can even have unconscious or subconscious thoughts that you're not aware of that can also bring negative things into your life. So I just wondered if you could comment on that a little bit. Have you studied that?
Well, yeah. Yes, I have. And that's actually the point I was making when I used Trump, was that people don't stop and look at that and say, why am I doing this? Is it because this is what I've learned to do? What is causing me to think in this way? And I found a lot of times when we have a reaction to something, and we may have discussed this before, I'm not sure, but sometimes if you just sit with that, a mental image from your past will come up, a situation from your past. And Billy has said at one point, in I don't know which book it was, it might have been the Might Thoughts, I think it was actually, that those past memories are very valuable. When we have those memories that just come up, that they're an opportunity to, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, to study that memory and as to why it's coming up. And a lot of times, if a memory of a situation comes up over and over, and I found this to be true, that's what's so cool about this teaching, is you can apply it, and I found this to be true, that a situation would come up and I say, oh yeah, that's like this situation that happened in my life, and that is when I, one of the reinforcing episodes or whatever you want to call it, situations that cause me to feel to react the way I'm reacting right now.
Well, that's extremely interesting, because I do have memories of things that percolate upward at times. So I wonder if there's something that my conscious mind needs to learn from that. Is that kind of what you're getting to?
Yeah, I am. And sometimes, I will be dealing with something as an adult in my adult life, and I'm reacting because, of course, no one's perfect. Even if we're working to be as neutral as we can, we still have times, you still have times you react, of course, to things. Well, when I do, I stop and ask myself, why am I reacting to this? Mm-hmm. Letting it upset me. And, or, if you have an insecurity or anything that's holding you back, sometimes those memories will percolate up, and they just, like, I'll have the same one that comes and goes for a while, and I'll go, oh, that's interesting. What do I need to, or I may say, what do I need to learn from this? Or sometimes I just instantly know. Oh, I understand why I'm remembering this. But if people pay attention to that, that's why paying attention to our thoughts. It isn't just what we're thinking on a day-to-day basis, as far as about things that's important. It's also those past memories that come up because there's a reason for it.
That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. One thing that you said, I don't know if it was I don't know. I thought we did one other show together. Maybe you said it on another program, not on Revolution Radio, but on Blog Talk. I remember
we did three.
We did.
We've done three.
Have we really?
Few.
Wow.
We have.
Gosh, see, it just shows you how good my memory is.
Well, you do so many interviews with people, and I don't. So I remember.
Okay. But the one thing that you said that really just shot right into my brain, like, whoa, this is hugely important, is that, and I find this to be the case tremendously with the Meier material, is that contemplating it. I mean, it's not nearly, just reading it the first time is just the beginning. And then I'll go off, like sometimes I'll memorize passages. Like this is one passage I've memorized because it's so profound, and I've been contemplating it for years to try to completely understand it. And this is Love Letter 27. He says, love is the highest principle in all creation, and through it, everything exists in absolute logic. So I've been contemplating that for years now, and I talk about it on the show, and I'm getting each a little bit more information from it each time. And I also noticed that when I say that, just the act of saying it puts my thinking back in a neutral, positive balance. So, like, I've restored my own.
See that.
You see what I'm saying? I've restored my own
Right.
inner harmony
Yes.
by doing that. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I pull a lot of weeds on my property because, we don't use any herbicides or pesticides.
Good for you.
Only very, very natural. Neem oil is the strongest thing I've ever used out here. And so I have a lot of opportunity to pull weeds. And of course, they use that analogy a lot in the teaching about pulling the weeds out of the garden of your thoughts, pulling out those. Okay, so I use that time to meditate. And so I've been, that's what I do when I garden is it's very meditative. And so I think about the things I have studied in the teaching while I'm working in the yard, in the quiet.
That's fascinating.
And I think probably a lot of people do that when they garden, meditate, and don't even realize that's what they're doing. I think that's one of the reasons it's so relaxing and centering. And also, you're out in nature and you're working with plants and things like that. But that is the time I spend to contemplate, whatever thoughts are coming up about my situations I'm dealing with, or things in the teaching. Like you were saying, you read something and you think about it a lot to understand the depth, especially on the subject of love, because we've been totally misled.
Yes.
When it comes to love, that is just so sad, really.
Oh yes.
That love that shouldn't even be called love. I know Billy calls it affective love, but
yes, there's effective love.
Yes.
And that's love based on reverence and respect.
Yeah.
And on appreciation. Yes. And then there's romantic love or attractive love, which he calls false love.
Yes. That's why I said it shouldn't even be called love.
So it's like I said about the verse, the particular passage that I memorized, just saying that restored harmony, internal harmony with me. Here's another one that does the same thing. It says, the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation. That's another thing that I've meditated on and pondered on for years and years and years now.
Well, it's quite beautiful, and it feels wonderful just to even hear it.
Yes, it's true.
And one of my favorites is simple, but I always remain relaxed.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
That is one of my favorites, because that, though it's so simple, that helps you to become neutral. If you can relax inside, you can relax your mind, relax your thinking, your body, that is really helpful to thinking in a neutral, positive manner. And that's why Billy says it.
Isn't that the 77 meditative sentences or something like that?
I think it is. And that one, how certain things you just, stick. Really, that's one that really stuck with me, because it's profound, really. It sounds so simple, but it's quite profound. And we make better decisions when we're relaxed.
I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. Is that the one you're talking? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. And I don't even remember to say the other part a lot of times, because I just know, that the first part is so, it's like shorthand, I just say that to myself as a reminder. And that would be a very good thing for people to say when they get in their cars to drive.
You know, that's another thing that I've noticed as a trend is the insanity on the expressways. Have you had any strange experiences lately like that? I have them on a regular basis.
Not lately because I don't drive much anymore. I don't have to drive on the interstate much.
Good for you.
But I know I'm lucky. But when I did, I had, road rage. I'd be driving down the road with my kids in my car, going the speed limit, and someone would be behind me honking or telling me, wanting me to go faster. I'm thinking, no, I'm going the speed limit. If you don't want to get in the other lane, it's not like I'm riding the left lane, trying to control everybody else's speeds. I'm in the right lane, and then they drive by and flip you off, and that's something we talked about in our study group, and we kind of joked about what a great test of remaining neutral and relaxed is while driving.
Oh yeah,
because of how stressful it's become and how people behave.
You're bringing up a book. He has a book. It's called Meditation from Clear Visibility. And I don't think that one's translated yet. Is it?
It's not. No.
Okay. Just parts of it, right?
Yes. Just parts of it are translated. And I think the Canada group did a little booklet. In fact, they did. I have it. That's excerpts from that book.
It must be such a job to translate these things. It must be so much work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was doing it for a while, and I realized I really need to learn German. It was helping me to learn German.
Yeah.
It really was. But then there's that whole using the Figu dictionary to make sure the words you're using are proper, the proper words to use when translating the teaching. And so I put, so now I just translate things for now for my own personal use. I haven't been translating anything to put it out there on the internet because I don't have time to do it properly. And I really need to study more, but I haven't. The summertime is, especially May, June, is just too busy. So I've gotten out of the habit of it.
The meditation from clear visibility. I'll just read a few of these. Okay, but before I do that, let's analyze what happens. So we detect that our thinking is no longer neutral positive.
Right.
That we are either upset or most of the time it's just we're upset. We're becoming negative. Now, sometimes you can actually become too positive. But that's a little, that doesn't happen quite as much to me anyway. I mean, most of the time I'm like, I'm getting angry about something or I'm upset or I'm worried. And so we've detected, our little inner detector has said, something's wrong in my thinking, my emotions. That's a clear indication. Your emotions have flared up. Well, then you're off. Yes. Also, your feelings may become a little negative. Now, the feelings are different than the emotions. The emotions are these primal, intense, hard to control, raging kind of things. Now, the feelings grab the thoughts. But if you have a negative feeling, it can be a little, you say, whoa, something's wrong. So what I've got to do is restore myself to neutral positive. Now, and one of the things you can do to do that is to quote, like I was quoting things about love. There's things in the Might of Thoughts you can quote, and you can also quote these little things in the meditative sentences. So I'll just read some random things here. It says, I am strong within myself, and I change my mental self-image positively. Everything is achievable for me, and I master whatever I wish to accomplish. Now, that was one of the ones I used to say to myself
Mm-hmm.
all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Everything is achievable for me, and I master whatever I wish to accomplish. Because a lot of times, you know, at work, you come up with these challenging situations, and you wonder, can I get through this? What am I going to do to get through this? So, and now what I've done is by studying the might of thoughts and all these different characteristics of neutral positive thinking, and I tell myself, I'm confident, I'm optimistic, I'm relaxed, I'm cheerful, I'm enthusiastic, I'm satisfied, I persevere, I persist, I endure, I am calm. So in these little things, they put me back in that neutral, positive state of mind. So that's what you're talking about here, right? Restoring that right thinking.
I am, and you know, also I'd like to point out that, you know, for the people who might be listening to this uh, program, not to be afraid of negative thinking or a negative situation, to deal with it, and that's part of that overly positive kind of, you know, thinking is. People will become overly positive because they're afraid of the negative or being negative. And
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, that's been my observation, because I actually was like that when I was younger. It was a coping mechanism I used because I grew up in a very chaotic life. And I was one of those people that, I mean, luckily I was very strong, and I was strong, you know, and used some things that kind of went too far the other direction. So it helps me learn to realize because if you try to paste over the you know, a sense of fatalism or negative thinking or something, and you don't deal with it, it's still there.
Well, the one thing about these negative repeating thoughts is they're habits and they're ingrained.
Yes.
And one of the things you can do with like quoting from the 77 meditative sentences, like you were saying, is you're training your subconscious. If you repeat these things, it starts to sink down into the subconscious.
Yes.
And that's where the problem is, really. A lot of times.
Yes. I think that's true. But I mean, for instance, the reason I bring that up is I was having coffee with this lovely woman who the subject of the Civil War, the coming Civil War, came up.
Oh.
She was talking about the future of the country, and I said, well, you know, their Civil War is looming.
Mm-hmm.
And she accused me of being negative. Don't think that way. I said, no, that's not being negative. That's looking at things as they really are.
Yeah.
So I saw her misunderstanding of what negativity is, and also her fear of anything negative, because the Civil Wars are a negative consequence, you know,
right.
of what's happening. Of course, there will be positive things that come from it, because there always are negative and positive in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was really interesting. I watched her do that, and I thought that's a new age, a product of the new age type of thinking. Is if you know, they have this idea that if you even look at a situation that's negative, you're manifesting it.
That's interesting. Well, it's very interesting because, and it says this in the Might of Thoughts, it says, the negative and the positive are two forces which should never be separated because they belong together. In fact, they depend on one another. So that's one thing I try to remember.
Yes.
I think the bumper music has started, my producer's telling me. So we got 5 minutes, and then I'll start the second hour of the show.
Okay.
Okay, folks, I think we are back online now. We're getting ready for the second hour of Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. I've got Karrol Steeves on the line. She heads up the study group, one of the U.S. FIGU study groups, which is in Colorado. And I am going to read a little bit from page 52 of the Might of Thoughts. We've been talking a little bit about what are neutral positive thoughts and what happens when you don't have neutral positive thoughts. So let me read here. It's on page 52 of the Might of Thoughts. It says, self-created suffering is only ended when the human being in his or her thoughts is purely enlightened and neutral positive equalized, and his thoughts can come to fruition in this form through their might. All self-created circumstances from which some form of suffering develops for the human being are without exception always the unavoidable product of one's own wrong thoughts and thereby one's own mental disharmony. In contrast to that, all self-created circumstances which bring the human being grace and enjoyment, love, joy, happiness, peace, freedom, and harmony are the product of one's own neutral positive equalizedness and harmony. So that's kind of what we were talking about before the break, correct, Karrol?
It is. And as you're reading that, I was thinking about how if you're able to achieve, even to a small measure, what you just read. So I used to tell my kids, no matter where you go, there you are, which meant, of course, you can't escape yourself. You can't run away from yourself. If you move to a new location, if you medicate yourself with drugs or alcohol, once they wear off, you're there again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can master our thoughts and have harmony and good thoughts and good feelings and of appreciation toward ourselves, our planet, others, it's so much more enjoyable to be with yourself. Because really, we need to make best friends with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't do that, nothing else is going to really be that satisfying. And so Billy's doing a great service in helping us to understand this and because life is just so much better if you take a trip, you enjoy it more because you enjoy yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? You enjoy your own thinking, you enjoy your outlook on life, you enjoy just the whole experience because of your peacefulness, your calmness, your good outlook, your cheerfulness, and there's no substitute for that.
You guys spent a good deal of time in the Way to Live book, and I think the way he puts that in the Way to Live is fulfilling your duty to yourself. Doesn't he say it that way?
Probably, yes. That sounds familiar. I would not, yes.
And let me, in my notes here, I've got a few things about what it means to fulfill your duty to yourself. It says, if a human being wants to live truly and fairly, then he or she has to consider and understand that the fulfillment of the duties to himself or herself is always and constantly the most important and foremost. And this is the thing I forget, is it's not the most important and foremost to me. Do you ever do that? It's like, I need to, first take care of myself.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Especially if you're raised in a society where, we're taught sacrifice yourself.
Oh, yeah. Goodness.
Don't put you're only virtuous if you put others before yourself.
And it's just the opposite, right?
It is just, yes, it is just the opposite. And I see a lot of still, this attitude of sacrificing your life for someone else.
Yes,
that's contrary to the teaching.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
And
not.
that's so ingrained in the human or in the American patriotic, culture.
Exactly.
And so that's when I see that a lot of that being bandied about. And I think, yeah, we've got a long way to go because people don't understand they just don't understand about that. They think that if you say that, that's just blasphemy. That it's, I like the analogy of you're flying on a plane and the steward tells you, flight attendant tells you, put your oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child or another passenger in need of help. Well, that's really good.
Exactly.
Uh,
Good advice.
good advice, because that applies also to life. You've got to put on your own oxygen mask first, or you can give any good to anybody else.
So let me read a few more examples of what Billy means by fulfilling your duty to yourself. It says, be honest, benevolent, don't turn your back on yourself, no self-chastisement, no self-abuse, no feelings of inferiority, no bitterness. And that's one of the things that I used to do, I don't do it anymore that I can think of, is I really don't have these feelings of inferiority before. And for some reason, they would just come out of nowhere. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, yes.
And I don't know what that was from. Maybe that was one of those programs
Probably.
that I learned when I was between 1 and 7 years old, and it's in my subconscious like a program that always comes up.
Yes. Well, and that's even with, women. Being a woman, you're taught, I was taught all the time that, women just aren't good thinkers. They're too emotional. They can't make decisions. Let the men do it. You just make our lives more comfortable. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of messages out there. And there's messages for men too, that we get as very young people. Well, and, don't forget, look at all the marketing out there designed to make us feel like there's something wrong with us, so we have to fix it.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Cologne or clothes or makeup or plastic surgery, you name it. You have to wear certain kind of shoes, I watch these young kids, in angst over fitting in and dressing a certain way so they'll be accepted. Yeah, there's no wonder that adults struggle with all these issues because it starts really young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A couple more of these are, and I'll just read this one again just because it's so good. No self-chastisement, no self-abuse, no feelings of inferiority, no bitterness. Be gentle to yourself. No flattery of the eye. Care for the health of your body and your psyche. Challenge your mind. Don't devote yourself to your passions, to your lusts, to your vices, to your addictions. Use your intelligence, rational logic, or you will have no enjoyment in the fulfilling of your responsibility. And maybe I will read a little bit from page... Well, here's one. Here's one on page 34. It says, if the human being does not continually pay attention to himself or herself and does not fulfill his duty to himself or herself and his or her own duty, then he or she declines, ends in misery, whereby even suicidal thoughts are not infrequent. That's a big statement.
Yes, it is.
Not fulfilling your duty to yourself can lead to suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
Especially if you're on some of these medications that they have out now.
Yes. Yeah, that actually make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, and I think because we aren't raised properly on how to cope with things, and when things turn very rough, this rough road we're going down, we're going to see a lot of suicides, I think.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. People won't know how to. They're not equipped. You know, it takes a lot of work to get yourself to the point where you're strong enough to see everything as it is, and then just deal with it. And accept yourself and be gentle with yourself, as Billy says, because that's another out of that particular. How there's just something that was the one that I latched on to. It was be gentle with yourself. That was the one I needed to hear. I needed finding of. Yes.
So you guys are spending all of your time in this book.
Oh, we are, yes.
That is so interesting. Yeah. It's like every group has their own emphasis,
Yeah, they do. We decided on that one just because personally, I think it's the easiest book to understand that's been translated into English for people.
Really?
So, yeah, because I don't know if you notice how pragmatic it is.
It has this wonderful, relaxed, down to the earth feel to it. It's hard to put into words. Yeah.
It does. And it's easy. The way he wrote this book, and I think the title says it all, The Way to Live, The Art zu Leben, that you can apply it to life. And because, you can memorize the teaching and be able to, memorize all the contact notes and what happened where. And I mean, I see this happen a lot, but if you don't know how to apply it to your life, what good is it?
Right.
To you, if you don't know how to apply it. And that's an important thing to understand. And so this seemed like a book that was easier for people to read, study, so it isn't just about reading. Of course, I always refer to it as reading, but actually I'm studying it. We're studying it because we will take one sentence, just like what we're doing here. We'll take one passage, especially, there'll be something Billy says and we all go, what exactly do you think he means by that? And take it apart and look up words, and that's how it's meant to be done.
Yeah.
And it's quite satisfying way to approach it. And then it's up to the individual, of course, once they put the book down, to apply it, to constantly remind themselves, as you were saying, as things come up we all every day have opportunities, multiple opportunities to apply and exercise those muscles to apply the teaching, so that we think in a proper way and that we respond in a proper way to situations in a beneficial way, to be more precise in my words. And if we don't, we can just take stock of our day and say, well, how did I do today? Was I able to apply what I'm learning to my day? How was my day? And if you didn't have such a great day, well, there's always tomorrow to do it again. And the next day.
We were just looking at in the Way to Live book and how it talks about not fulfilling your duty to yourself can lead to suicide and suicidal thoughts. Well, there's another passage, and this is one of my favorite passages in the Might of Thoughts book. It's in page 224. It says, "This is in contrast to entangled ideas confuse the thoughts, abruptly go from one extreme to another, whereby a misdirection of the thoughts arises, which triggers emotions and can even lead to manslaughter and murder." So I really took this thing apart. For example, tangled, it says this is a contrast to entangled ideas, and an idea in Billy's world is something that isn't completely thought through and isn't completely developed. So he says,
Right.
tangled ideas. Tangled can be defined as twisted together, untidy, matted, confused, jumbled, mixed up, messy, chaotic. I'm sure everyone has felt their thoughts when they're in that state. So tangled ideas, meaning things that are disorganized, that aren't thought through completely. What do? They confuse the thoughts. So
Yes.
when you're confused, what does that mean? Confused thoughts are when you've drawn the wrong conclusion sometimes.
Yes.
Or confused thoughts are when you have lost your borders between things and things are flowing together now and you can't see category A, B, and C. It all looks like a mush. So those are confused thoughts.
Yes.
So when the thoughts get confused, they go abruptly from one extreme to another. And I've felt that before, where I'm angry 1 second and then not the next. And so I'm jumping back and forth. And this causes a misdirection. So now your thoughts just completely go off, and this triggers emotions.
Yeah, that's like your emotions become a torch and pitchfork crowd.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Not good.
So, and this can lead to murder and manslaughter. And if it doesn't go that far, what you'll do is you'll just rotate a negative thought program in your mind over and over and over again. And what that does is it weakens your life force. And your thoughts can make you ill. If particularly angry thoughts can lead to liver cancer and other kinds of cancers. So controlling your thoughts is really critical, don't you agree?
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, that's a good barometer for our own health that, you know, we can look at, you know, am I doing all the right things for my health, including controlling my thoughts? Because, you know, we can exercise and, of course, it helps to take walks and take the right vitamins and get sleep. But if we're walking around with our fists clenched, you know?
Yeah.
I remember one of my sisters told me that she realized that she was clenching her fists all the time. And she said, I was like, wow, that's quite a realization.
Yes, it is.
She had to work on why she was doing that and to learn not to do that. And it was anger that she had that was in her subconscious.
In the subconscious.
Yes.
So she wasn't even completely aware of what it was about.
No, she just was clenching her fists. And she would realize her hands would ache. Because
my goodness.
From holding her hands in a fist all the time. And I thought that was great that she realized it, that she noticed it.
Well, the thing of it is that teaches us is we have these subconscious or unconscious thoughts that are going on that we're not even aware of.
Yes.
That's dangerous.
Yes, it is. That's a hard one to wrap my brain around. I don't even know if I use subconscious. Was that the right terms? Because there's a difference, right?
Or maybe pre-conscious. I mean, I think we have pre-conscious, subconscious, unconscious.
Yeah.
And the good way to teach yourself the difference is when you touch a hot stove, you immediately pull back. You don't think. You're not even consciously aware.
Right.
Now, as a musician, I can tell you what a musician does is he practices something over and over and over again until it gets into the subconscious. So when he plays it, he doesn't think about where do I put my finger next.
Right, it's like muscle memory.
Yes, it's part of the subconscious. So that's what we want to do with the spiritual teaching. We want to get it so it will just play back.
Yes.
It will just play back the right thinking.
Well, that's why, you know, a good way to gauge yourself is when you watch yourself and you see a situation that normally would have activated you in the past and it no longer does.
Right.
You get to see your progress, which is really wonderful.
Yes, it is.
And if you're not making progress, you get to address that too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I really just emphasize people learn to repeat all the time. Repeat. I'm confident. I'm optimistic. I'm relaxed. Or repeat something like, love is the highest principle in all creation, and through it everything exists in absolute logic. And that will take your mind out of the wrong thinking, because you want to get back to a case where rationality is starting to govern your consciousness again, because we get in a place where irrationality and virtuelessness start to govern our consciousness. And this is really bad, because then only ideas can be followed. You can only follow things which haven't been completely thought through. So you want to get to a point where an idea can be converted into an ideal, ideal, which is something that's been completely thought through. So ideas must be thoroughly contemplated and worked through. And one of the keys to this, which I stumbled across, is we have to, you know how Billy sometimes talks about the unwords?
Yes.
Like unknowledge or something like that, he says.
Yes.
Well, he says, recognize the values and the unvalues in your ideas. Mm-hmm. So I had to do that maybe a couple of weeks ago with some issues at work, and I had to recognize that there were unvalues that I had in my thinking. So I had an idea in my head, and it's funny, it'll trigger emotions. It'll trigger negative emotions. If you have an idea that isn't completely thought through and it's not an ideal, it will trigger emotions. So you know, if you're triggering emotions, that there has to be something wrong with your thinking. It might not be all of your thinking, but you need to find the flaw.
Yeah.
And pull that out, just like the weed you were talking about. Pull the weed out.
Yeah.
And then you'll just calm down.
Yeah, and sometimes I find that if I get like overwhelmed is one of those, overwhelmed by just, the things that you have to do in a day, or I will stop I will just get away from all of it and go outside, away from it. And that's why, I was saying that it's important that we are, like you were saying, we're looking at the unvalues. Mm-hmm. That's why it's important not to be afraid of the negative.
Right. You got to look at it.
So,
you got to own it.
You do, right? Because you have to be able to acknowledge, oh, look at this. I am feeling, because overwhelm's a negative thing.
Right.
And so I realized that in order for me to stop that feeling of overwhelm, because it wasn't changing anything, it wasn't getting anything done any faster. Mm-hmm. I went out into nature and, just did things I enjoy. Do something you enjoy that's in nature.
Oh, absolutely.
Or look at, or, go out and appreciate. That's a lot of this wrong thinking that we have, is a lack of appreciation.
Absolutely.
I mean, what we're doing to our planet is a lack of appreciation. It all goes back to that.
Yes.
So we are not appreciating this beautiful, amazing planet that we're living in. We're not appreciating our homes that many people are busy picking apart everything that's wrong with, it's not perfect. If I only had this, instead of just saying, yes, I need to fix this, deck that's broken, or, our woodshed, the wind picked it up. I'm looking out the window right now and it's looks like a giant Mark picked it up and threw it on its back, and a pallet is holding it up. And the metal and the cement pylons are clinging to the base, sticking out in the air. So we have to fix that. But
did you have some high winds?
We did. We had some very high winds back when everybody was having all those high winds, a few months ago, and it picked because our woodshed was almost empty. It picked it right up out of the ground. I was standing next to it when it happened, and so this is a really good example. You can look at this shed that looks really weird, and it's in our line of sight, and you can get upset over it that it happened. Or you can look at it and go, yeah, that needs to be fixed. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. Not obsess, but people obsess over things like that.
Oh, I know.
And so if we can pull our attention away from those stresses and appreciate something for a while, it really helps, for me anyway, clears my mind. And I can look at that situation that was previously stressing me out, and I have a new perspective, a more balanced perspective.
Let me get back to this particular line in Might of Thoughts, page 224. One thing he talks about, we were talking about the unvalues, okay? Mm-hmm. What are unvalues? Now, these are unvalues that are often characteristic of psychopaths. And this is talked about in Figu Bulletin 68. So let me just read a few of these. Lack of logical decisions, lack of rational contact, irresponsible activity, frequent change of sexual partner, pathological lying, mendacity, making untenable promises, breaking them, exaggerated thoughts and feelings with regard to the values of your own person, pretended charm, boredom, which I thought was so interesting. I would have never thought boredom would be something that a psychopath would have. Now think about that. That's bizarre. Deceitful.
I know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've thought about that one a lot because, I think that's part of why they get themselves into trouble.
Oh, never thought of that.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot because, I'm never bored. I'm just not. I'm not one of those people that's bored. And so I thought, wow, to be bored, how uninterested in life would you have to be bored? With everything there is out there to learn. And we have such short lives. In fact, my husband and I were just talking about that. Our lives are so short, and there's so much to learn and do and experience. How could anyone be bored? But I guess they are.
I think your frame of thoughts gets narrowed.
Yeah, definitely.
Somehow they don't have the ability to have broad thought. I was like that when I was a kid. I would get bored when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah, every child does. Yeah. And I think it's funny you bring that up because we were talking about that. I said, I haven't been bored since I was a child. Mm-hmm. The children, I think, have to experience boredom so that they are motivated because, boredom is boring. It's not a pleasant thing. And so we find ways out of boredom, usually, we find interesting things to focus on and to read or to do, and so we're not bored. And so I think as a kid, it's probably a necessary part of, but if you grow up and you're still bored, yeah, that's a problem.
Well, it can lead to insanity.
Yes.
If it's taken too far.
Yeah.
So let me read a few more of these. A great poverty of feeling due to corresponding thoughts. These are values of the psychopath. Endorsement of the death penalty. Now, I used to endorse the death penalty. I remember when I was a kid, I thought the death penalty was wrong, and then I went through this whole change of point of view when I got a little more involved in certain religions like Christianity. And then I thought death penalty, oh yeah, you got to kill them people, for sure.
Yeah, you got to be punished here. Yeah, yep. No second chances.
The other thing is it talks about here, endorsement of torture. That's a whole strange
Yeah,
mindset.
isn't that scary?
Or
Well,
the, go ahead.
that's why I was saying when I was reading those comments from when I read the comments from people on news articles, say they, found some guy who was sex trafficking children across, some border or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the comments are even worse. That's what these people don't understand. The things they are saying that should be done to this person, I just go, oh, we really, it's just disturbing.
Almost as bad as what that person did, you know.
Yes. Well,
Oh,
according to the teaching, it's worse, actually.
is it?
Yes, because it's revenge. So this
Oh,
person is degenerated and gone out and done something, reprehensible, but we are seeking revenge on them. So it's like a bloodlust to hurt this person to get revenge.
very interesting.
And so we're consciously, deliberately wanting to snuff out a life to make them pay or torture them. And that's what you're saying. People advocate the torture. The stuff they say they should do to them in prison. I just go, whoa, this is, boy, have we got a long way to go. Because there's nothing, you read the comments and it's nothing but violence that they're wishing upon this person instead of looking at it in a way that this person is doing things that are terrible and they need to be stopped and they need to be put somewhere in nature where they can
Change their whole mindset, right?
Yes, like you were saying about boredom causes insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why I think solitary confinement is a terrible thing to do to somebody.
Oh, that's a good point. Wow.
Look what it does to the minds of people. Many people have had breakdowns or become suicidal because of solitary confinement. That's torture.
Right.
And they're saying it's a punishment, punishment for how does solitary confinement, unless someone is able to use it to meditate, and bring themselves back into the right way of thinking, that would be tremendously difficult given our level of, of evolution on this planet to use. I would guess there'd be a few people that could do it. Most people can't handle it, and they come out and they're, it's a terrible thing. It's torture.
Before I forget about it, I want to come back to what
Just
we're talking about.
put them in a room with 4 concrete walls and a cot, and no contact with people or nature or sunlight or,
That would, you'd think about that. Would that not
terrible.
even make them worse, right? That would make them worse
Hello?
than they. You still there? Hello? Karrol? Maybe I dropped off. It's very possible. Let me double check here. I think I'm still attached. I think we lost Karrol. I'll bring her back here in just a minute. Try to bring her back. You there, Karrol? Hello? Well, I think we lost Karrol for some reason. Well, folks, I think I lost my guest. I can't seem to bring her back. Oh! Karrol? Are you there? Very strange, folks. Sorry about that. I'll try one more time. Oh, there she dropped off. Here we go. Try to bring her back. Yep, I lost Karrol. Oh, we'll see what happens here. Well, folks, we've only got like 20 minutes in the show. This is very strange because the one thing I was just about to bring up was she sells these wonderful little devices which are supposed to block electromagnetic waves. I'm just typing her little message here. And I've been using one that she gave me here, and it's supposed to block. And with the 5G, we're supposed to get hit even worse with these cell phones. I can't seem to bring her back. I don't know what the problem is. So I'll just finish out the show here. We've got only maybe 20 minutes. What me and Karrol have been talking about is 2 books that Billy has written. One's called The Might of Thoughts, and the other one's called The Way to Live. And we were talking about the unvalues of the psychopath. So what happens to a person when you and I think it happens to all of us in smaller cases. For example, when you go into that state that I was just reading about there, where your thoughts become tangled, and okay, it says in page 224 of The Mind of Thoughts, this is a contrast to entangled ideas confuse the thoughts and abruptly go from one extreme to another, whereby a misdirection of the thoughts arises, which triggers emotions and can even lead to manslaughter and murder. So it says here, tangled ideas. Now, ideas are things which we have not completely thought through. Ideas have values and unvalues in them. Now, and we are told to recognize the values and the unvalues in our ideas, so perhaps we just remove the unvalues from our ideas, and then our ideas can become ideals with an S. So an unvalue is something negative that over time we've begun to value. So it's a negative thought pattern that we have started to value. And some things, unvalues, can require months or even years to change for the better. Unvalues are related to our character pattern, and they can actually be psychopathic in nature. Another thing is the lack, for example, the lack of ability to have deep feelings for others. This is considered an unvalue. Unvalues are characteristic of a person that's becoming psychopathic. For example, you can have a pathological angriness, a kind of anger that just runs completely out of control. So what we need to do is recognize the values and the unvalues in our ideas. And what we're trying to do is remove the ideas and only have the ideals, the completely thought through things. So let me give you a few more of these unvalues, and you can compare these with your own thought patterns. For example, antisocial behavior. Are you becoming antisocial for whatever reason? I've been that way before. Pathological angriness, I was just talking about. Do you have a lack of remorse? A lack of ability to have deep feelings for others? Severe impulsiveness is another unvalue of the psychopath. A tendency to cheat or swindle, a lack of self-cognition, a lack of awareness of yourself. So if 18 of these 70 negative characteristics apply to you, then you are probably in the state of being a psychopath. So anyway, this is one of the very interesting things that I've studied in the book called The Might of Thoughts. So when tangled, this is a contrast to when tangled ideas confuse the thoughts and abruptly go from one extreme to another, whereby a misdirection of thoughts arises, which triggers emotions and can even lead to manslaughter and murder. So this is what we're dealing with here, folks, is when our thoughts run completely out of control. The Meier information, part of the spiritual teaching, is designed to allow us to remain in harmony and to maintain control of our thoughts. And if you feel your thoughts starting to become negative, a little out of control, tell yourself, I am confident, I'm optimistic, I'm cheerful, I'm relaxed, I'm enthusiastic, I'm thankful, I'm in harmony, I persist, I persevere, I endure, I am calm, I am satisfied. So what you're doing there is reprogramming the subconscious. As Bruce Lipton says, we have all of these programs that are running in our subconscious that we picked up between year 1 and year 7 of our life. And we often go back to our unconscious behavior. And what we want to do is be conscious and use our conscious mind. And Billy puts it this way. He says, do not allow your thoughts to drift. Steer your thoughts like a captain steers his ship. And because you are the master of your own destiny, you are the forger of your own fortune, you create your own good luck. Another passage on page 224, since I've gone Meier the thoughts here completely, is that we're told, therefore, it is necessary to search for the source of the life power and to develop the power in order to have a reliable life potential upon which one can depend, therefore, in which one can completely trust. So what is the life power that's talked about here? Now, the German word is Lebenskraft, and it's discussed in Contact Report 39. And Billy says here, then the case is indeed clear. Billy speaking with Ptah, this occurred December 3rd, 1975. Billy says, then the case is indeed clear. There's something else, however, that you should explain for everyone for the interest of our cause, namely the connections of certain connections with the age of the earth human being. I already know about these things because Svath informed me about them when I was a boy. Nevertheless, these things were never written down, so others aren't oriented about them. I'm referring to the fact that the mental forces of every single human being are capable of raising or lowering the life force of others. You can lower your own life force by your wrong thinking. You can lower another person's life force by your wrong thinking. So it's important to remember here is that associating with the wrong group of people can lower your life force. And the power of the life force is mentioned in books like the Omphalen Murado that talks about our life force. And we have on Earth a peace symbol that is wrong. It's upside down. The branches of the peace tree, so to speak, are pointing downward, and this negatively affects our life force. This turnaround tree of life does not let the life force become effective. It makes it flow into the ground. In that way, it becomes the annihilator of life. So we're using this peace sign all over the place, and we're actually imprinting into our subconscious thoughts about death. Now, light is a very important thing. Light has an aspect which you can see and feel, and other vibrations which you cannot even see. And these light vibrations go into our ground. So the underground plants draw their vitality through them, as do underground animals. This happens the same way in the deep parts of the sea where it's completely dark. These animals are getting the power, the Lebenskraft, from the light, even though it's invisible at that point. So you should search for the source of your life power. And your life power is in your consciousness. So the word power has a lot of different meanings. Power is the ability to act in a particular way, especially as a faculty or quality, the capacity to direct or influence the behavior of others, the course of events. Power can talk about mechanical or electrical energy. So this is what we're talking about with power. So this life power is so critical. So we should be searching for the source of our life power. It's our thinking. So look at your life. Look at the things that enhance your life power. And you'll have to be, this is something I'm sorting out too. You know, when your thoughts are right, what are you doing when your thoughts are right? When are your thoughts enhancing your life power? When are they not enhancing your life power? Probably certain YouTube videos, certain films should be avoided. They are essentially decreasing your life power or interrupting your life power. Notice it says here, it's necessary to search for the source of our life power. The source, the word for source is Quello in the German, which means a well, an origin, a wellspring, a repository. And we're told that it's necessary to search for the source of the life power. And the source of the life power, the healthy, neutral, positive thoughts which radiate in our consciousness. This is the whole idea of the Lebenskraft, or the life power. And this is one of these concepts. Another one is your Lebensziel, your focus, your determination, your direction in life. The whole purpose of our life, according to Meier information, is the evolution of your consciousness. And that comes through learning, through wisdom. You know, one of the most important things that I think to contemplate is also reincarnation. Just the mechanics of reincarnation. You know, the spirit form. We all have a spirit form. We all have a spirit form. The spirit form comes into the body of the child at 21 days. The child is at this time an embryo. The spirit form brings the life power with it. The life power. And it sends its electrical energies throughout the whole body of the child. And this child's heart starts to beat, its consciousness starts to work. And I was reading today a little bit of the psyche. And Billy talks about the difference between the material consciousness and the spiritual consciousness. Your material consciousness is what's creative. It's who you are in this lifetime. Let me read here. This will be a good indication of what this material consciousness, the material consciousness realm, the material consciousness itself can indeed become disturbed. Contrary to the invulnerable and untouchable spirit, which represents a purely creational product in its form and power as well as in its swinging wave. Now, the swinging wave is an interesting thing the Meier teaching talks about. It's something that I'm still learning about, because there's an electromagnetic impulse or an electromagnetic swinging wave that comes out of the conscious material consciousness thinking. And it's extremely powerful at times. And eventually, we'll be able to do things like telekinesis, levitation, teleportation, telepathy. The swinging wave, the electromagnetic swinging waves, and the teaching of the spirit are periodically built up electromagnetic fields, which are not bound to any matter, but nonetheless include energies and unfold forces which can be of immense might. Now the Ishwishes, the kings of wisdom of the old, had mastered. There were people on the earth in ancient times, not earth humans, human beings from other worlds who came here, The gods of the earth were human. They came from the depths of space. Now, some of these fellows weren't so benevolent, but they had learned to use the material consciousness in ways that we're not completely aware of yet. Our material consciousness embodies the personality. It also, this is the part of us that's able to create things. For example, the material consciousness is what does a drawing, invents something, writes a book. The material consciousness is the only part of your consciousness that can be creative. Your spiritual consciousness cannot. But your material consciousness is susceptible to illness and other health difficulties. Your material consciousness is susceptible to megalomania and haughtiness. And these gods of old were megalomaniacs, even though they had these incredible abilities. So, let me continue here. All other negative as well as positive things are founded therein. Because through the personality, the material consciousness, all thoughts and feelings, all emotions, as well as electromagnetic powers and swinging waves are created, which distinguish and direct the life form concerned, thus in this case, the human being in particular is spoken of. So, every lifetime, you get a new material consciousness. The spirit form comes into the child, and you get a new material consciousness. And you have to start again with a new lifetime. And this is the whole process of reincarnation. We live for millions of lifetimes. We live 40 to 60 million years reincarnating in a physical life. Let me read a little bit here on page 30. It says, in order to reach high evolutionary levels mentioned, the human being must have already lived through his or her seemingly endless reincarnations of 42 million years of his or her evolution. However, this is not true for any one of the human life forms on the earth, and also not for any spirit form belonging to a higher sphere of earth, because the human beings of earth themselves, those created on the earth, are still so young that regarding their evolution, they are only beginning to change their last baby shoes, while those human beings living on earth who originally came from the far reaches of outer space only have a total age of 8 to 12 million years. So the oldest spirit forms of human beings on the earth are 8 to 12 million years old. Those are people that came here on ships in the times of Atlantis and Lemuria 133,000 years ago, in the times of Pelagon 150,000 years ago. Billy says here, therefore the human being of earth is still not yet in a position to comprehend all the nuances and forms of feeling. This was actually discussed here in terms of feeling, because there are a lot of aspects to the feelings that we don't have yet here on the earth. These will remain inaccessible to the earth human beings for a very long time. When the human being of earth will be able to do so, then he or she will already have long left the earth and will be living somewhere on different planets. So this is part of our destiny. We will leave the blue planet, which is a shame in a way, because I think this is such a great planet. It's too bad that we have so many billions of people on the earth here destroying it, because the blue planet will not exist for as long as the human being needs for his or her evolution. So we're going to leave this planet eventually to continue our evolution, which is kind of I think a thing that shouldn't be too shocking. I think the bumper music has started. I want to folks, for listening. This is Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Thank you. Have a great evening.